Hello, my name is BJ Paris. Welcome to Tapping Into His Treasures. How is everybody? I hope you're all doing well. I'm doing well. I just got over Memorial Day weekend. Hope you all had a nice Memorial Day. Every year I put a picture of my 4 uncles on Facebook. It's one big portrait with the 4 brothers, all in a different branch of the military, and I get a lot of comments on it. All 4 brothers that were in the service at the same time. And all together with all my uncles from both sides, my mother's and father's sides, and 3 aunts' husbands. I have had 11 uncles who served in the military. So thank you all for your service, men and women alike. All out of breath. So I do have 2 testimonies I want to share with you before we get into our theme today. And one happened the day before Memorial Day weekend. It was Friday. And I was supposed to go into my doctor's that afternoon at 2:45. And not for a physical or anything like that. It's just that the office called and said that she wanted to talk to me about medications. So I said, that's a holiday weekend, and after 2:30 is going to be work traffic, because you can't even get near Route 1 after 2:30. And I usually don't drive in all that traffic. So I really didn't want to go on that day, but the doctor only comes to this area every Friday, and her main office is in the city. So I kind of had to, and I was dreading it. I mean, for like 3 days after they called to set me up with that appointment, I had it on the forefront of my mind, and it was really bothering me. And that day especially, that Friday. So anyway, God took charge. My faithful friend, capital F, he took charge. I got a call on Friday morning, probably mid-morning, that something happened to their computer systems and they had to reschedule all of their appointments for that day. So I didn't have to drive in it. Praise the Lord. So I tell my close Christian friends that God messed up the computers, but I wouldn't tell the doctor that. So anyway, my second testimony is something that happened the next day, Saturday. And this one is like so extraordinary. My town, Thomaston, was having a block party downtown, which is not very far from my house. So I was supposed to go with one of my neighbors, and I ended up going alone because she wasn't doing so well. But anyway, I went out to my car, parked in front of my house, to get a pouch that I keep change in for when I go to yard sales. And I keep it under the passenger seat of my car, and it doesn't have a lot of money, and maybe $10 worth of quarters, dimes, and nickels, and a couple of ones. And I don't care who knows. I don't care if anybody steals it. I mean, it's too much of a testimony not to tell because of fear. So anyway, so I went out to the car to get it, and I was on the driver's side reaching over the seat, and I realized that I couldn't see it on the bottom of the seat, so I had to get in further and put my head all the way down like on the floor and look underneath the passenger seat. And what do I see? Something that I had lost 2 years prior. It was a spare car key with a very expensive keychain that I had purchased a couple of years ago, a Christian themed. And there it was, not directly under the passenger seat, but farther back. Now, 2 years ago, I looked high and low through every crook and nanny in this house and in that car. In every closet, I emptied garbage pails, thought it maybe got lost in the trash. Trust me, there wasn't 1 inch of space in my house or any closet or in that car or in the trunk. Under the back car seats, as far as I could see, all these things I went through 4 times. And it was bothering me, like, where on earth did it go? As a matter of fact, I even after I got from the car back out to the car that day, I was in the store and I went back to the car. And when it was gone, I thought that I had it on the passenger seat, which I apparently did, and it slid back. But I thought somebody had stolen it when I was in the car. And the first thing I did was I went back to the store, and I went in the store and asked them if anybody turned it in. I called the police station. I think I even called the post office. And that thing was gone. It was just gone. And about a year after that, God was talking to me in a dream about what I was considering lost. Because he often speaks to me in dreams, as you know. And in the dream, he gave me 5 dreams within 3 nights. And he told me, or he showed me, that the item was not stolen and it was not lost, it was just hidden. And he showed me some images. You know, I think maybe one was like a stack of towels in a linen closet or something. They were all folded, and the key and the keychain were hidden in there. So it didn't necessarily mean that they were in my linen closet, although I checked. But he just told me that it was hidden out of sight. And so I did the whole thing all over again. Every nook and cranny in the house and in the car. Nothing. So I just had to let it go. So anyway, that was last year. So now, 4 days ago, Saturday, I go out in the car to look for the pouch with the change to take with me to the for spending money. And there it is right in front of my eyes. And why I hadn't seen it a year ago or 2 years ago was it couldn't even be seen from getting down on the back floor of the car and looking. You couldn't even see it that way. It was just so hidden. It was unbelievable. So anyway, I was just blessed. That was such a big blessing for me, and I've just been praising God and thanking God for it ever since. So those are my 2 testimonies. So today we're going to talk about the Book of Ruth, one of very few women written about in the Bible, and it's in the Old Testament. And the main character is Ruth, and also her mother-in-law, Naomi. And this story is, I'm sure, familiar to many of you. It's a very short book. It's only a few pages, but those few pages are jam-packed. The story is symbolic of different things, which we'll touch on. So it's a very short book, jam-packed with an amazing story. So I'm not going to read the whole thing verbatim, just a few verses verbatim. Hang on, change glasses for this. Ruth 1, verses 1 to 14 is the lengthiest that we're going to read. And then we're going to just ad-lib. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem of Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he, his wife, and his 2 sons. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi, and his 2 sons were named Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites, if that's how you pronounce it, from Bethlehem of Judah. They went to the country of Moab and continued there. But Elimelech, who was Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. Orpah and Ruth, they dwelt there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. So the woman was bereft of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. So she left the place where she was, her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they started on the way back to Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find a home and rest, each in the house of her husband." then like a future husband. Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband tonight and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it is far more bitter for me than for you that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me." Then they wept aloud again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. So now we're going to switch over to the footnote to chapter 1 and chapter 2. Okay, so here we go. I'm reading this verbatim. How many part with Christ? This is one of the symbolic things that I mentioned earlier. How many part with Christ at this crossroad? Like Orpah, they go a furlong or two with Christ till he goes to take them off from their worldly hopes, and then they fairly kiss and leave him. That's language from a long time ago. They fairly kiss and leave him. And so let's go back to the last few words in verse 14. Then they wept aloud again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Ruth clung to Naomi, her mother-in-law. And from there we're going to verse 15, the very next verse. And Naomi said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." And then 16, and Ruth said, and these are very popular words throughout history, the next 2 or 3 verses. Urge me not to leave you, or to turn back from following you, for where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. In verse 17, where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. And then we're going to go back to the footnote, verbatim. Ruth is a prophecy than which none could be more beautiful and engaging of the entrance of the heathen world into the kingdom of God. She comes forth out of Moab, an idolatrous people full of wantonness and sin, and is herself so tender and pure in a land where dissolute sensuality formed one of the elements of idol worship. A woman appears as wife and daughter, chaste as the rose of spring, and unsurpassed in these relations by any other character in the Holy Writ or Holy Writings. Ruth's confession of God and his people originated in the home of her married life. It sprang from the love with which she was permitted to embrace Israelites. The conduct of one Israelite woman, Naomi, in a foreign land, was able to call forth a love and confession of God like that of Ruth. Ruth loves a woman and is thereby led to the God whom that woman confesses. And the footnote also reads, she was permitted to embrace Israelites. To me, that exemplifies a person becoming a part of a church. This is in our day now, a part of a church, the body of Christ on earth. Remember, we've talked about Christ is the head and we are the branches. He's the head, we're the body. So it's a person becoming a part of the church, a part of the body of Christ here on earth. A person gives his or her heart to Christ and becomes a part of the church body. And the body just envelops that man or woman or boy or girl into their fold, bestowing upon them love and acceptance. The body is a representation of God on earth and pours forth love of God on a person, and the person embraces the body as Ruth did her mother-in-law and the Israelites. And continuing on, Naomi and Ruth went on to Bethlehem. Naomi was welcomed by her old friends. Remember part of the story? They welcomed her and they called her Naomi, and she said something like, "Don't call me Naomi anymore, call me Mara," I believe she said, because that meant grieving. I forgot the other word I was going to use. So don't call me Naomi anymore, because I've had too many bitter things happen to me. So the townspeople may have greeted Ruth for Naomi's sake. You know, that maybe they were pleasant to her for her mother-in-law's sake, but they were very skeptical of Ruth, as she was from Moab, and people were skeptical of anybody from Moab. So Naomi and Ruth needed food. It was the barley harvest season, and Naomi had a relative named Boaz, who was a landowner who hired workers. Naomi told Ruth to go to his fields. There weren't many spoken words, but once she got to the field, but there didn't have to be any spoken words because God was at work. He was in the background doing his thing from heaven. Although it was common for women to be molested in the fields, Boaz took it upon himself to keep an eye on Ruth and make sure she was safe, or if he wasn't there to keep an eye on her, he spoke deliberately to his male workers and those that were in charge over the other workers. And he said specifically to them, leave some extra grain for her to pick up, to glean from, on purpose. I may have written that down here someplace, but I don't want to forget it. And make sure that she does not get molested. So that's the situation that Ruth was in when she was out in the fields. So then the rest of the scriptures that I'm going to read are from chapter 2, verses 11 to 18. Here we go. This is when she was in the fields with Boaz. And Boaz said to her, I have been made fully aware of all you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and mother in the land of your birth and have come to a people unknown to you before. The Lord recompense you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, Let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and have spoken to the heart of your maidservant, though I am not as one of your maidservants. And at mealtime Boaz said to her, Come here and eat of the bread, and dip your morsel in the sour wine mixed with oil. And she sat down beside the reapers, and he passed her some parched grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left for Naomi. And when she got up to glean, Boaz ordered his young men, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And let fall some handfuls for her on purpose, and let them lie there for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned. It was about an ephah of barley. In last verse, and she took it up and went into the town. She showed her mother-in-law what she had gleaned, and she also brought forth and gave her the food she had reserved after she was satisfied. Well, this is quite the story. So, after a space of time, Boaz ended up asking Ruth to marry him. And we'll get back to that in a second. So you probably remember how the rest of that story went. According to their tradition, there was another man in town who had the right to marry her before anybody else. You may have to look that up yourself, because I don't want to read the whole Book of Ruth. I don't have time to do that. But there was another fella, and he realized that they were all in the town square, and the fellow realized that he couldn't take her on as his wife because it would like have a backlash on him and hurt him somehow. So then after that was discovered, Boaz was able to take Ruth as his wife. So they made an agreement, and they had all kinds of ways to, it was like a handshake, only they had different customs in different places back in those days. And it had something to do with a shoe, I think. And it was sort of a handshake deal. So anyway, when Boaz asked Ruth to marry him, Ruth responded, "Why have I found favor in your eyes that you should notice me when I am a foreigner?" He was just a good man. He was he had good character. So they were married and had a son, whom the neighbors named Obed. It's not a strange custom for the neighbors to name somebody's baby. Have you ever heard of that before? Wow. So years later, Obed, the son, became King David's grandfather. So he was in the lineage of Jesus Christ, King David was. All because of Boaz and Ruth. So you see, Ruth, who came from a place known for wicked people and sin, which represents the natural, follows Naomi into Bethlehem, which represents the spiritual. Before coming to Christ, this is the analogy, before coming to Christ, we live in Egypt, so to speak, which represents the natural, and then after, we are rebirthed into a spiritual land. So Ruth went from being a nobody, but she was a nobody with a servant's heart who cleaved to God, and God poured his blessings upon her, making her into a somebody, the great-grandmother of King David, whose great-grandfather Boaz was in the lineage of Jesus. So with all that I say, hold on, with all that I say, if you find yourself in a situation, maybe a family situation, or a work situation, or a relationship situation, or a financial situation, and if you feel like you are stuck in that situation, stay humble and look toward heaven and wait on God. God may have something incredible in your future. There are so many stories on TV about entrepreneurs who were bankrupt or down and out, or who had very humble beginnings, and they just thought it was over. They had no hope at all. But later on in life, they gained great wisdom from what they went through, and they became presidents and CEOs of companies, and they became landlords and people who employ other people, and people who contribute greatly to the wealth of our country. And many of these men and women are very successful today and very happy today. And all because of the humble beginnings. And I think some of them, this one guy that I watched on TV last week, I think it was living on the streets or was a street sweeper or something, and he got rich. So, and speaking of, I don't know if it was him or a different person, were featured on Undercover Boss on TV last week, and I watched it, and this guy was teaching a seminar for his employees. He's got like into the billions, I think, and he gave them away tons and tons of money all the time. And he just loves life so much. I just got the biggest charge out of watching him and listening to him. So he would be is a perfect motivational speaker. So he even made this statement, which made me laugh. Wait till you hear it. This is what he said. He said, if I were ever reincarnated, I would want to come back as myself. I don't believe in reincarnation, but the thing is, this guy loved life so much that he would want to come back as anybody else. Now, how many people could say that? I never even thought of anything like that. So all that to say, no matter what you may be in this very day, as far as financially or anything else, it doesn't mean that you're going to have to stay there for the rest of your life on earth. Just look to God and cleave to God and hang on and ask Him to be your blessed hope. And ask Him to be your helper. And trust. And ask Him to increase your faith, the quality of your faith, not the quantity, the quality. And just wait patiently and let Him humble you and teach you through those rough times. And then when you do get a little more advanced as you grow older, you'll be a better person. You'll have a better character. You'll have more substance and all those things for having gone through a patch of time that was kind of rough. So don't give up. So visualize Ruth when she gave birth to her baby boy, thinking about her former circumstances in Moab. And then having the privilege of having Naomi and her husband and her two sons as teachers and guides to come to know the living God, and going through what she went through and clinging to Naomi when they went back to Bethlehem, and meeting the rich landowner who had love and respect for her, and becoming a mother of a son. I mean, imagine her holding that baby, what was going through her mind. Like, how could I go from there to here? But the possibilities are endless. Just keep your focus on God and don't move to the right or to the left. Okay? So we're going to have a prayer now. Let's see. Oh, I don't think we have the time for a prayer. Darn. I'll be praying silently for each and every one. God bless you and God bless yours. God keep you and God keep yours. Till next time, bye-bye for now.